All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all my Westerosi friends around the world. Welcome back to episode 3 of House of the Dragon, where I, Karen Peterson, review HBO's Game of Thrones spinoff, House of the Dragon, with my friends. This week, I have a very special friend of mine, my friend Ruben. We met a few years ago at the Super J Cup in San Francisco, and we've been terrorizing each other ever since.
Ever since day one.
Ever since. Ruben, welcome. Tell everybody
Okay.
about yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruben. I'm from the Bay Area of California. Like Karen said, we met through professional wrestling at the Super J Cup in San Francisco through our mutual friend Mike. We met up at this bar, and like I didn't even know Karen, and Karen's talking about some. She's talking about some random dude that was trying to like holler at her DMs.
Oh
On,
no.
And she's like, "Look at this guy. He's messaging me and he's trying to add me as a friend." I go, "Are you guys friends?" She goes, "No." And then like, I don't even know Karen. This is pre-COVID. I touched her phone. I'm trying to hit accept. I go, "You are now."
You're the worst.
And
Oh
we've
yeah.
we've been friends ever since.
Yeah. We we had a couple of beers at that place had a really sweet garden. I really liked like the
Oh
garden
yeah,
with like, the murals and everything. And then we just hung out in line waiting for the meet and greets over. It was at what, San Francisco State University? Is that
yeah,
where it was
yeah.
at?
SF State.
And yeah, and then you've come to Florida and we've caught up over here, and eventually someplace we'll catch up at another wrestling show. But I'm on the East Coast, Ruben on the West Coast, and it is Labor Day. It is Monday, September 5th. He is graciously awake at 9:30 in the morning, so we can get this recorded and go about our days. I have friends traveling back home from All Out, and so we were talking about All Out just off the air, but my friends were like, "Hey, how soon are you gonna get episode 3 of Westeros off? We have like we got some flights we're waiting on. We got some car rides." And I'm like, "I got you, but it all depends on how long." Ruben and I talked today because we're chatty. I'd like
We
to think
talked
we're pretty
forever.
chatty.
Yeah, we met up in Orlando when I was out there, and I think we would like stayed outside of the restaurant for like 3 hours.
Yeah, well, that was in part. So, in part because I was trying at the time, I was trying to buy something off of the Hanakamura website. And unbeknownst to me, all of my credit cards had gotten blocked by my bank because they thought the payment was suspicious. So Ruben gracefully sat with me as I was like basically on the verge of tears, trying to sort my life out, being able to pay for dinner. I got through it, and I don't buy things online very much, or if I do, I pay someone else to buy them for me just because I like having my credit cards. I don't like having to get new ones like every 3 months when I go shopping. So
It's fun times. Karen's one of the few people that whenever I'm traveling, if we're in the same area, we always find time to meet up. So,
yes, and
so
those are the best kind of friends. The ones who are just like, hey, you got some time? I'm like, yeah, actually, surprisingly, sometimes I do. And even with like Orlando being as wide as it is, if a friend of mine makes their way all the way here to go to the theme parks, I try to move my schedule around to make it happen. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on what time of year it is. But that
for
being
sure.
said, we're not just gonna move our schedules around. We are going to go back in time across the universe, across the eastern seas. We are going back to Westeros. Now, Ruben, tell me about your fandom as a fan of Game of Thrones. How did you get
So
into it? Where did you get started? Just the basics on it.
so basically, my roommate at the time was a huge Game of Thrones fan from the book, and so he was super excited when the series debuted on HBO. So I caught it the first episode. I was like, okay, this is okay, it's cool. But then it hooks you with the farther that you go in. And with Game of Thrones, it's like it's just so nail biting, and it was like ahead of its time because like this is like the first series that really just build up characters just to kill them.
Yeah.
And you're like, and the whole time you're like, oh no, they killed who? And spoiler, if you have not seen Game of Thrones, they kill everybody.
Yeah. In the infamous words of Lance Archer, everybody dies. Everybody dies.
Yeah,
Like you just as you get attached to someone, that like getting attached to any one character in Game of Thrones is like the kiss of death for them, literally, because sure enough, they'll probably die, and not when you expect them to.
yeah, all of the moments, man. Because like even like the Red Wedding, and then like uh, when the reveal of Hodor and how he got the way he was,
Oh
you know
my
that that
gosh,
that,
I
that brought
still
me to
cry
tears.
every
I was
time
like,
I watch the
oh,
episode. Me and Brandon
and
Stark, we got some problems.
yeah, and then when the reveal of John being Aegon, and then they name him King of the North. I cheered up when that. I'm like, finally, that's all he ever wanted to be was recognized as a Stark, and they finally do it.
Yeah.
But
I the only thing I ever wanted for that particular arc was that when they started talking about spin-off series, I wanted I wanted a proper mini. It doesn't have to be like a full blown 10 episodes or full like multiple season show. I wanted a mini series on the story of Lyanna Stark and
oh
Rhaegar
yeah,
Targaryen. I wanted to know that story. Like we got the little snippets here and there, and we know Ned Stark pieced it all together, and then Bran pieced the rest of it together. But yes, Jon Snow being Aegon the Sixth, Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name, and then losing everything and getting sent back to the
to the
wall
wall.
after everything.
That has to be like one of the dumbest punishments, because like when they told me he's going back to the watch, like there's a nice watch.
Well, and my whole thing was is that after all of that, the Unsullied were like, yeah, we're gonna go to Noth and we're gonna go back to Essos. So like, why do you guys get to say so if he lives or dies? Like, that's not your business. Go home. Get out of
I'd be
here.
like, all right, John, they're gone now. Come back.
Yeah, come back. But yeah, so speaking of Aegon Targaryens, we are going to talk about episode 3 of House of the Dragon, which is about Aegon, second of his name. We've jumped 3 years since the very awkward council meeting where Viserys, in front of his own daughter and the small council, and announced that he was finally going to get remarried. And Rhaenyra's like, yeah, great, good for you, Dad. And then he drops the truth bomb that he's going to get married to her best friend and lady-in-waiting Alicent Hightower, who was conspicuously standing at next to her father, hand of the king, when she's never been in the council chamber. So we jump 3 years, because of course they have to have the wedding. Alicent has to get pregnant, and we're getting ready to celebrate Aegon's 2nd birthday. So, but before all that happens, we open up. We were opening up over at the Stepstones again after everything that poor Corlys Velaryon told the king about the crab feeder and Prince Drahar. He's like, needs to be taken care of, and Daemon Targaryen and Corlys put their money where their mouth is and said, you know what, let's go take care of this ourselves. Maybe not the smartest plan. And we open up on a scene where they Prince Dragar is doing what he does best, is destroying Valyrian ships, setting them to the torch, and crucifying all the survivors. But this time we get to see a little somebody come to the rescue of the survivors, even though the survivors don't survive the rescue. We have the arrival of Daemon Targaryen. How did you feel watching the new opening with familiar music? And what was your thoughts on the opening scenes here, Ruben?
When I saw the first the opening credits, I thought it was pretty cool. It's a cool little take on the old school one, but instead of geography of Westeros, it's the bloodline of the Targaryens, which I think is cool. Nice little spin-off. I think that as the series progresses and as people live and die, we'll see some changes, probably more than likely. But as for that opening scene, man, it was brutal. Seeing someone get crucified, and then the Valyrian soldier, he was sitting over there. He's talking shit the whole time.
Yeah.
To him, because we're gonna get you. He's like basically spitting in his face, and he gets super excited because he sees the dragon fire. He sees Syrax's fire.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and then he's super excited, and then he's saving my prince. And as soon as he says that, he gets stomped on.
See, I feel like if you were in Game of Thrones, Ruben, you would have been this guy. You'd be the one talking shit, be like, yeah, that's my man. He's coming to save y'all. And then bam. Squish.
I was like, oh, that poor dude. But it was so funny though, because like first, like I enjoyed the seeing a bigger view of Syraxis, because his shape of a dragon is way different than Daenerys. So he does look more like a snake, almost in a sense of a Japanese dragon with wings.
Yeah, he looks more like a wyvern as opposed to a dragon. He's got a more lean, long body. When other dragons like Drogon or Balerion were like big honking monsters. Right. But what I do like about this, and we'll get to this dragon later, is that in each episode so far, we've been introduced to a new dragon.
Mm-hmm.
It's been focused on a different dragon. The first one was more about Syrax. The second one was more about Caraxes. This one is about Caraxes, but we also get a new player that, you know, enters later on. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, because they said at the very first episode, we have 10 full-size dragons out, right? Show me the dragons. Right. We're getting the dragons.
And the best part about these dragons, they all look different.
Yes. As someone who is a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan, that was kind of the problem. I understood why with Viserion, Rhaegal, and Drogon that they were all from the same, like they all had the same mother. They're all from the same clutch of eggs. So they, of course, all look alike. What I like about this series is that they're starting to present different dragons. And I believe I read somewhere, or it was one of the many, you know, more deep thought, like think pieces on the dragons of Westeros, is that Caraxes, Daemon Targaryen's red dragon, is supposedly deformed because he's so lean and so long, and like he has like a second set of smaller wings which are like on his back legs, which it kind of gives him like, it makes him kind of look like a half dragon, kind of flying squirrely, like he has like little hinges in the back. But I kind of view Caraxes like as like a Ferrari. He's like he's a speedy little dragon.
Right.
So what he doesn't make up in, like what he doesn't have in size, he makes up in speed and like agility.
Right. More agile.
Yes. So, and unfortunately, what we learn is that despite Daemon's best efforts by laying the beach to the torch and you know, coming to the rescue of the Valerian men, is that this has been going on for a very long time. They've been battling at the Stepstones for nearly 2+ years. Like ever since Corlys left to side with Daemon, this has been going on. And the pair of them initiated it without the leave of the crown. And on top of everything else, they're losing very badly. They're losing lives, they're losing ships, they're just losing the fight against a group of guys that are just hiding out on a beach cave. Which
go ahead. It's kind of like what they said about Winterfell and House Tully. You know, you can't breach the fort, right?
Yep.
So they've been fortifying in these caves. But at the same time, I'm like, why don't you just cut off the supply line? They have to eat. So if you cut
my thing is, like, you got the dragons, just take them down to the caves and just kind of like, you know, breathe a little fire into the caves.
Right. Or use the dragons, like move some rocks.
Smoke them out.
You know what I mean? Like, this is a lot harder than it needs to be.
Well, and the thing is that you get the impression at the very beginning that there's only the one dragon, that it's just Caraxes, which we find out later is not true. There is more than one dragon involved in this fight,
right?
But it's conveniently left off the map until the very end. So the time
that's the
jump,
whole thing.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that's the whole thing, though. Like, you have dragons, you have these brilliant military strategists, and you have dragons. You have air support, and you can't get
like that's right. That's
worst
I'm like, is Daemon and Corlys really this bad at their jobs? Like, Corlys is supposed to be the sea snake, right? The most weathered, strongest, like, traveler of the world, the man of the oceans, and yet he's losing ships left and right. And you've got an actual flying weapon and more than one, and you're still losing. How? That's my problem.
The worst.
They're not good at their jobs
at all.
They were good at their jobs during peacetime. When Daemon was in charge of the city watch, he took the city to task, and you know, Corlys was a peacetime masters of ships. They were doing good.
Actually, does make sense though, because back to episode one, the episode where Rhaenyra has to pick the new Kingsguard. So she's looking for people with experience. It makes sense because these guys haven't seen combat in over 15 years. So
exactly.
That kind of makes sense to why they're kind of inept at their jobs.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you would hope and think they'd be better at it, but again, they're peacetime guys learning how to fight, like, you know, in real time with very minimal like practice behind them. So, you know, as we've talked about before, we've done a 3-year time jump. So they're starting to age everybody up quickly. They're starting. We're getting closer and closer to the end of where we're going to see the young princess and the young queen. And now we're back in the small council room. The small council room, however, is holding a very private party, very exclusive party. It is the gathering of the king's guests before the hunt. They are going on a celebratory hunt for Prince Aegon. He is getting ready to turn the big whopping 2 getting ready to enter the 2 years old, and they're like dad and all his rich, wealthy friends and the whole family. They're all gonna round up and go. They're gonna go glamping. They're going out to the Kingswood. They're gonna go hunt some boar and hopefully some deer. And
Wait, you have to use that word hunt.
Hunt. They're gonna sit there and drink while the oh my gosh, what is it? The head of that, like the kennel keeper and like all the people that work for the king are gonna do the hunting proper. But they're just gonna show up and I always, whenever I hear in Game of Thrones that someone's going on a hunt, I get Robert Baratheon flashbacks. I'm like, yes. Oh my god, he's gonna be like. But Viserys isn't like Robert. He doesn't get like sloshed. He doesn't get very heavily drunk. And I'm like, but something always goes wrong when somebody goes hunting. You're like, I kept waiting. As soon as they said, I'm like, something's gonna happen. Someone's gonna die. So because no one, we haven't had a very monumental death aside from, well, in this episode we had we had the passing of Emma Targaryen last episode. It opened, the first episode opened, was it the first episode?
That's the first episode with Emma.
First episode was Emma. I'm getting all turned around now.
Second episode.
Who died in the second episode?
The Kingsguard.
Yeah.
He died off screen though. That's
right. The head of the Kingsguard, which is why we got Sir Kristen Cole appointed. Sorry, timelines are all backwards. Again, getting the flashbacks. I'm like, people are starting to die.
But his death wasn't off screen, so we didn't get to see anything brutal. So
correct.
It's kind of like, oh yeah.
So no sooner is Viserys is happy for a change. He's got his hot young second wife. He's got the baby that he's got the son he always wanted. But then, God bless Tywin Lannister. The most Lannister that you could possibly see. He's meek, he's polite, and he's just like trying to get the king's attention and be like, your majesty, your grace, your brother kind of needs you. He's kind of really losing, and the king wants to hear nothing of it. He's like, this is not the time. They've waited 3 years. They can wait 3 days. I was like, bro,
that was the line right there. I
was like, you can see how unwilling Viserys is wanting to get involved in his younger brother's battle, which I feel like had he listened to Corlys in episode 1, we may not be at this point. But Viserys is, he wanted to be like Jaehaerys. He wanted to be a peacetime king. He didn't want to worry about infighting or, skirmishes or anything that might directly affect Westeros. So while this is going on and, Tywin's trying to talk to the king, and Otto Hightower is being very, very transparent about his machinations and what he wants.
Right.
Even though he's the hand of the king, his older brothers, bent the knee to Rhaenyra. Now that their grandson, that a half Hightower is part of the royal bloodline, Otto Hightower's like, no, we're not doing this crown princess nonsense anymore. My kid, my grandsire needs to be the one to sit the Iron Throne. You wanted a boy, I gave you the means to have a boy. You have a boy now.
Right. You almost get the sense where if you go back to episode 1, you kind of see like the wheels turning.
Yes.
Because immediately after Emma dies, he's saying you didn't get remarried, and he starts planting Alicent in the mix, right? And now, you're right, he does have this heir, but then you also get the sense of just the way that these families are structured. Like, even though he is the hand of the king, which is, arguably the second most important position in Westeros, his older brother is commanding him to do something.
Yes, because his brother is, he is the warden of Old Town. He is the highest ranking Hightower. And it's one of those things where, even though his brother was the one who bent the knee to Rhaenyra, now that Aegon is in the picture and they finally have the prince that the king has so longed for over the last 15 years, the Hightower family is starting to sing a different song. Right. And it's going to be, I'm wondering at what point, if there is one, if Viserys will actually catch on to everything that Otto is doing. Because Otto is even though he's doing everything in the guise of advising the king, it's very transparent and very clear what he wants.
Oh yeah, it's very self-serving.
He wants a hand in ruling Westeros. And what better way to do that than to marry off your daughter to the king and get a grandchild? And should something happen to the king, because Otto's no fool, he knows that Viserys is not in good health.
Right.
He had the sore that wouldn't heal. He had the cut that turned into him now losing not one but two fingers. Like, Viserys is falling apart very quickly. He's deteriorating very rapidly. And you also notice that he's very dressed up, despite everyone having some more of like relaxed stylings of clothing. Like, he wears his gloves almost all the time. The only time you don't see is when he's alone in his chambers with Alicent. So
he's covering everything.
He's hiding everything. He's hiding his illness. And Otto is very aware. He's almost hyper aware. Like, if there was a lead crow to be, ready to dive onto the carcass, it's Otto Hightower.
It's Otto for sure. No, for sure. He's pulling all these strings right now, because like everyone, it's not just him, but everyone else has been positioning after Emma's death to get someone remarried to the king that would they could, essentially own Westeros eventually through bloodlines, right?
Correct.
And now that he's in that position, like he's trying, the seeds are slowly planting, which also coincides to a lot of Rhaenyra's teenage angst that's going on right now too. Because like during that entire meeting, he's looking for his daughter. He's like, "Where's Rhaenyra? She should be here," and all this other stuff. And we see Rhaenyra. She's out in the Godswood chilling with her Bluetooth speaker, that singing minstrel.
Yeah. She's being serenaded while she reads a giant book under the Godswood, like like you do when you're trying to be supportive by being in the vicinity of the party, but not really you're hanging out in the veranda outside the party, but you're not really participating in the party. And this is where we start to see the shift in Alicent's attitude. Not only she's also very pregnant with child number 2 at this point, but she pulls rank by basically telling the minstrel that the queen is here, the queen commands it, the king commands it, and she speaks on behalf of Rhaenyra's father to Rhaenyra, which this is a very significant power shift from them being best friends, reading books together underneath the Godswood, joking about going to like ride Cyrax and ride the dragon around the kingdom together. It's a very definitive shift. And go ahead.
It's changed so much because like you almost get a sense where there's there's conflict within Alicent, right? Because obviously she naturally had a friendship with Rhaenyra, right? And that relationship was important to her, but not more important than her duty to her family to level up and become the next queen, right? And so you see the conflict in her where she still wants to be her friend, and you see that in her just through some of her gestures, even when other people aren't around. Because when other people are around, she's the queen. But when it's just them, she just tries to be, Alicent and Rhaenyra like how they were before.
Yeah.
She's trying to strike up these casual conversations, but you see Rhaenyra's not having none of it because she's still, one, she's pissed off that that you married her dad.
Yeah.
And then also, with this ties back to everything that we've been shown with Rhaenyra and Rhaenys of the whole they can never be a female ruler. And now you also get a sense where she's kind of irritated now that she has a little brother.
Correct. It's one of those things where it's the one thing that Alicent conveniently forgets is that she intentionally kept her secret meetings with the king away from Rhaenyra.
Right.
And Rhaenyra was completely blindsided by the fact that they had some kind of relationship more than, in this with her, supposedly most trusted confidant. And the confidant now is she's slowly turning into the wicked stepmom, because she now has she has the child that could supplant her. And even though Viserys is very keen on keeping Rhaenyra as his heir, it's one of those things where the baby, and as much as Aegon is getting celebrated, Rhaenyra is like she's feeling, you can definitely tell that she's not getting the same amount of pomp and circumstance that Aegon is getting at 2 years old. And it's one of those things where it's, as a female, she's all of a sudden like, well, is the only time I'm going to get this kind of attention is when I get married, and I don't want to get married. Why are you making and the whole to do about being like, well, your father wants you to come on the hunt, yada yada yada. They get in the carriage and they go, and even Viserys is a little dishonest in his reasoning behind wanting Rhaenyra to join them on the hunt. It isn't simply because he wants her there to go hunting with the family or to, to entertain the ladies or to be there. King Viserys has a plan.
Oh, he is.
Much to the disdain of his 17-year-old daughter, who, you know, she is of age now. She is able to marry, but she doesn't want to get married. And it's one of those things where it's very frustrating for everybody involved, because Rhaenyra feels abandoned by her father's new marriage and new baby. She feels like she's getting pushed out. And as much as Viserys wants to, you know, reassure her and be like, no, it's not, this isn't changing anything, you are who will succeed me, there are people in the surrounding environment that are all perpetuating this air around them,
Right.
where it was good while it lasted, Rhaenyra, but guess what, your dad has a son now, and this will come to a head later on. But the first thing that, you know, Rhaenyra says to him in the carriage is that she's like, I don't want to go hunting. I don't like the sound of boars dying because it sounds like a dying child. Right. Meanwhile, you know, her little brother's like sitting across the carriage, is like bouncing around and like having a great time and living his best life because he's 2. He shouldn't be going on a hunting trip at 2 just to like hang out and while mom eats cakes or whatever. But
rich people problems.
Yeah, very much. This is first world problems. This is rich people problems. These are problems that I will probably never have. I don't know about you. But the one thing that Rhaenyra gets very irritated about is, like, even though her father's named her, you know, his heir, she's still kind of being kept at arm's length. She's not allowed to help make decisions. She's starting to balk at her duties and responsibilities because they're not, like, now the impetus is for her to marry.
Right.
But her father has not given her other responsibilities. Like, in this 3-year span, the biggest choice that she had to make was adding Sir Criston Cole to the Kingsguard. Has there been nothing else that she's been required or asked to do of that importance in 3 years? And her and Viserys, their communication is not good.
Right. It's weird because, like, they in episode 1, in the first half.
Yeah, the first part of it.
First part, it seemed like they had this loving father-daughter relationship, where they had open communication and all that stuff. And then, you know, through the end of episode 1 and episode 2, you see that, you know, there's this big void in between. But yet, in episode 2, they had this huge moment, or the episode where he named her the heir, where he's sharing secrets, and they had this huge moment together. And then after the whole reveal of him bringing Alicent, like, what happened to that relationship? Like, has this entire 3 years passed by and she's just been, I'm going to my room and listen to my music this whole time? Or
I think the shock of her finding out that her father is going to marry Alicent may have put even though she doesn't want to admit it, there might have been a significant damage to the trust in their relationship, both with her and her father and her and Alicent.
Right.
Because all of this happened right around her, but neither of them were willing to talk to her about it until it was like, oh, but it's like finding out your friends are getting married, even though you never knew they were dating.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And it's one of those things where it's just like, as you know, this is something that directly impacts her family life, but also, you know, again, could impact her career moving forward as the queen to be. And especially after she spent all that time telling Rhaenys, no, it's gonna be different when I'm queen. I'm not gonna be the princess who never was. I was not gonna be the queen who never was. I'm going to be queen. And then, like, 3 years later, it's the I think I owe my Auntie Rhaenys a big apology for being a little bit of a brat to her, because it's happening all over again.
This all changed the moment that Aegon got put in the picture, right? Yes. So now everyone's plotting to figure out, okay, how you know, you see throughout the episode, people are blatantly asking him about, oh, now you have a son, are you change your heir? And he's looking at him like, no, right? And you know, poor Rhaenyra is like, you're in this situation, your dad's essentially moved on, has a whole new family, and here you are just left.
But you still live at home with dad and the new family,
right?
And she's increasingly having a difficult time finding her place amongst the new family. And I think this also will lead to events in the future, because I feel like she's starting to identify heavily with Daemon.
Yes.
When she was named the successor, and that was taken away from Daemon. I feel like it's the shoes on the other foot now, and now she's starting to understand that desperation and maybe who knows moving forward how that'll affect her relationship with Daemon if they ever meet again, because at this point she walks upon, you know, Queen Alicent, which is still weird for me to say because it's, you know, princess she's only like what 18 now, maybe 19 at the most, because they're supposed to be very close in age. But she's having her social circle with the ladies that are on the hunt, meaning they're, you know, having tea and just like shooting the breeze, as it were. But of course we have Lady Redwine with her very fat pug just eating her cake. And we have Lady Cara Lannister, another Lannister. And this is this Lannister. I'm like, this is, if there was a typical Lannister, she and Jason. I don't know how you get like Thailand Lannister and then you get Jason Lannister. Like,
well, just like Tywin and Jaime.
Yeah, like I guess that's where, you know, I guess
Where
Jaime comes from Jason name? At some point. Yeah, a very like Westerosi name, and then like top pick names from 1985.
You're Steve.
Very Steve much Lannister. So. Bobby Lannister.
So if anything, I think I want to see a spin-off show of the Real Housewives of Westeros, and it's just all the ladies.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes.
But it has to be done like Real Housewives style, like reality TV.
Yes.
Which
it would be such a train wreck, but a glorious one at that. But interestingly enough, the ladies are not like talking about the things that you would assume that ladies of this time would be talking about. They're not talking about their knitting or their, you know, their needlework or having kids or who's getting married. They are talking about the problems of the realm, largely in part to Daemon Targaryen launching an attack on the Stepstones in the Narrow Sea with Corlys Velaryon. And they're asking questions of Rhaenyra, being like, well, don't you think something should be done about it? It's your uncle. Meanwhile, it's convenient that you can tell that these ladies are very much siding with Alicent. That they, in the future, could be part of, if it becomes a queen versus princess situation, these are very much people that are going to be in the queen's camp, because they're the ones that are all like settling around the queen and giggling and having a good time.
Well, it's interesting because they're discussing small council meetings issues without even being part of the small council. So it's like, who told you this stuff?
They're very chatty husbands.
Yeah.
But yes, and this is I mean, I guess at this point, because it's been like 3 years since Daemon and Corlys left to go wage war on the crab feeder. So it's common knowledge at this point that, you know, that they're waging this war. But the fact that they're like, and he's losing, and like, and it's also very clear that they want the ladies here are directing their frustration with the situation at Rhaenyra, because she is the crown princess, overlooking the fact that the person to blame for this is Viserys, the king, and because they're sitting right next to the queen. Right. So this is not a conversation these ladies should be having, because that alone, you know, if it were a more stricter king, they'd be losing their tongues left and right, because it's not that they're like huddled up in a little tent somewhere. They're in the grand tent in front of everybody within earshot of the king. So it's like these ladies think they're untouchable, which I'm like, oh, girls, this is gonna come back to get you at some point.
Gossip Girls.
Yes, it's messy.
But as messy as that scene was, we did get introduced to a new character, Larys Strong. He's the son of Lionel Strong, the Master of Laws, and he's the guy with the messed up foot. So typically when Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, when they introduce someone with they give them a name and they give them a little bit of speaking lines, it's planting a seed for something else. So I think he might be someone to pay attention to.
Yes, I think so too. It's one of those things where Lionel Strong is probably becoming the Master of Laws. He's probably becoming one of my favorites, just because even though he does his job and he does his job well, right now he's coming up as somebody with absolutely no machinations. He is not in this sense. I would compare him to Varys, because he's putting the concerns of the realm first.
Yes, he is.
And without, you know, he knows his role, he knows what he's doing, but he's also not being like, because, you know, Corlys was trying to get once Emma passed, he was like, well, time to marry my daughter. Otto Hightower, time to marry my daughter. Beesbury, as long as I get paid, I don't care. And Maester's like, well, I mean, as long as it's in line with the 7, it's fine. But Strong has been the one guy who's just like, I'm going to tell you what you need, not what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And yes, I feel like them placing his son in all like into this, like not necessarily into on Rhaenyra's radar. I
Also,
think
Lions Den.
yes.
You seen those gossip circles? Anytime you walk in there, you can be fodder for anything. So
Yeah.
for him to walk in there is like, oh.
Yeah, and it was very curious. That, I mean, I understand the reason why he like because of his disability. He was just like he's like I'm not going to be running through the forest with all these guys and their dogs or riding a horse. Mind if I hang and have some cake? Sure, why not?
Yeah.
But I feel like from an ally standpoint, if he is to become someone of consequence moving forward, because the ladies openly talk in front of him without like they accept that he's there, but they're not making a big to do about him being there, that he could become a very good ally for Rhaenyra.
Yes,
because
I think so too.
People talk around him as if he's not there. And when people start doing that, that's when the secrets start getting out, because it's people getting messy and lazy. But we also, around this time, Rhaenyra goes outside for a bit of fresh air, and she meets Jason Lannister, and he, he's like, oh, I'm Jason Lannister. He's like, yeah, as if like all the lions weren't a dead giveaway, because he's got lion, all lion everything. He's got like a tent with a lion on it, flags, and he offers her some wine. Of course, it's the best because it's from Lannisport, yada yada yada. Now Jason, much like his mother, very much a Lannister. I was a little sad that he, that kind of like was like, yeah, my twin brother Tylan, he's sweet, but he's kind of like beige curtains. He's very boring and he's very like unassuming. I personally prefer, like, hey, if I were Rhaenyra, I'd go with Tylan Lannister over Jason. Right. Jason just I feel like he needs to be kicked in the kneecaps. Like he's just like, he's a bit of a brat.
Jason reminds me of all the bad qualities of Tyrion turned up to 100.
Yes. It would be if Tyrion had Jaime Lannister's looks.
Yes.
Like and just like
walling out.
Yes, before Jaime loses his hand and all of a sudden I love him. But yeah, no, this is probably like all the worst qualities of Tyrion, and then like the arrogance of Jaime, just like put it in a blender. That's right. Yeah, no, that's like super toxic king. We don't stand the super toxic king. That he can kick rocks. And the moment that Rhaenyra realizes that Jason just keeps stepping in it in this episode, because he offers her wine and suggests building a dragon pit for her, and as if he's already locked down the fact that he's going to be marrying her. He's like, "Now I'm going to wake you up. I'll give you whatever you want." And then he does the same.
Two dragon pits.
But then he also makes the mistake of saying the same thing to her father. And when he uses the phrase "loss of station," I was like, bro, you just told the king that you want to wife up the princess, not to become king consort, because you are operating under the assumption that now that you have a son that we're all here celebrating, that he's going to be the next in line for the throne. And when he also, to save his neck, he lets it drop that, oh, I'm not the only person who's been saying this or thinking this. And he's like, so what you're saying is that there's a rebellion coming. I was like, bro, drunk Viserys has a spine. Most of the other time, he's just like, no, everything's fine. But man, drunk Viserys has a mean streak.
It's crazy with Viserys, because you get like, there's some moments where you think that he's a pushover. Yeah. There's some moments where he makes clear, concise decisions. Yes. And like you get a mixed bag from him. Like really, like you never know what you're gonna get. And hats off to the actor who plays him, because like there's so many different levels. Because like there's a lot of scenes where he's just by himself and he's drinking and like he's just thinking about stuff. And I kind of view it as he wanted this party to be just an escape from all the BS that he's been having to deal with. Because like you gotta look at it, like his relationship with his daughter's falling apart. His relationship with his brothers fell apart. He has everyone approaching with advice that benefits their own selves instead of him, and he's getting it from all angles of people who are essentially trying to use him, and he knows it. He's not stupid, but he just wants to be left alone.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for Viserys is that he's still in denial that he's trying to be Jaehaerys, he's trying to be peacetime king, but he's realizing very quickly, especially with the death of Emma, that all of a sudden all the people that supported him and everything was fine, he's starting to see everybody for who they are, and that a lot of their intentions aren't as good natured as he would have originally hoped. Somehow he's managed to keep a blind eye to Otto Hightower and Alicent in this regard, but it's one of those things where he starts drinking very heavily in the episode, and it's the I think Viserys is so desperate to want to be happy, to want to be that dreamer, to want to, he wants Rhaenyra to marry for love, but he also understands that there's responsibility, like as the ruler of the continent, he has an obligation. And I think he's forgotten the fact that in all of his joy and celebration of his newborn child with his new wife, he's ignored his actual heir and his firstborn. And with everyone, he turns this on Rhaenyra later on, where she gets angry with him, saying that this was all a setup. You brought me here just to marry me off, and that I have no value anymore, and that you're just trying to make me do what you want me to do, and I don't want to get married. And Viserys is just like, no one is above station or duty. If I have to get married and get remarried and have a kid, guess what you have to do? And that's your job as the princess. And
Rhaenyra actually had one of the better lines at the beginning of the episode when she says, "No one's here for me."
Yeah, and
I was like, she's right.
She's right, and that's the thing, is that she says that, and like no one, like it doesn't register with a lot of people, but it's true, because she's just like, why am I even here? She gets so frustrated and so angry about this that she just, she just leaves the party. She gets on her horse and she starts sprinting out of the camp. Kristen Cole being, he's the one that was handpicked by her. His life changed because of her, and everyone watches her leave, but he's the only one that runs to his horse, gets on and starts chasing her.
Right.
And chases her all, like, it looked like she was either, I don't know if she was just trying to get away or trying to get back to King's Landing, or just to see how far she could go before the horse gave out underneath her. But he stops her before they get to a large river, and he gives her the one thing that she wanted this entire time: just someone to talk to, just someone to listen to her, just someone to spend time with her and make it about her. Because ever since Aegon was born, or even ever since her father decided to marry Alicent, it was no longer about her. And she's felt alone. And that's been the one thing that her father doesn't seem to understand. When Emma died, Rhaenyra's best friend became his new, what's the word I'm looking for? Social acquaintance.
Yes.
The emotional support, that's the word I'm looking for. And it was one of those things where him marrying Alicent took that away from her, because you don't ever, up until this point, you don't see Rhaenyra have any other ladies in waiting. She doesn't have like 2 or 3 or 4, much like Cersei did, where she had like a whole gaggle of girls following her everywhere. It was Alicent was all Rhaenyra had.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And he took that away from her. So of course she's gonna withdraw into herself. She's gonna focus on books and writing her dragon, and doing what she has to fulfill her role as princess. But she and she said this to her father before: I just want you to talk to me. And that's the one thing that Viserys has been very bad about. Like, he would rather face a dragon than have to deal with his 15-year-old daughter. And that hasn't changed.
Scary dragon.
And that hasn't changed in 2 years.
It hasn't changed now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, teenage girls are terrifying. It doesn't matter what country you're in or what area you're in, they're all terrifying. And so it's one of those things where, while this is going on, the whole debacle with Jason's happening in the tent, and Viserys becomes keenly aware that the expectation around him has changed. Even though he has named Rhaenyra as his heir, and he wants Rhaenyra to be his heir, he himself has bungled up the works by having a second child.
Yes.
Because now the assumption is quickly turning into, well, we're having this big to-do. We had the big tournament for the baby the son you were supposed to have, and Balon died, and now you have Aegon, and we're having this big hunting party for him. And they're informed that the lead huntsman, the head huntsman, has found the White Hart, a giant stag, the king of the Kingswood, and it should be nearby. And that was the whole point of the coming out, having their glamping party. They were going to the Kingswood to hunt deer and boar and big game animals. So they get together with the huntsman. They're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And ooh, you still there? Yes. Okay. Before we continue, I need to explain something. The internet in my house died. My router said, F you and your plans. I need a break. And decided that it didn't feel like working. So Ruben and I were mid-conversation. I've completely lost track of where I was at on my extensive notes. So if part of this is redundant, just correct me. I had to go downstairs and like pull open a cabinet and unplug a whole bunch of things and replug them in, and it didn't work. I had to call Spectrum because they're garbage.
You're
and
so
then
animated. They call you froze, Mr. You're like this. I was like, Karen, what you say?
and I was frozen like that, and you were like, and I'm like, Ruben. So yes, I had to call them, and I got an automated system. Couldn't get a person because it's a holiday today, but I reset everything. The internet, as I knock over my ring light, I'm throwing in the towel on Monday today.
I am done.
All right. So, Ruben, do you remember where we left off?
We were talking about Otto Hightower and Viserys, that scene, and it's really we're talking about how everyone else has these political aspirations to use to use their own motives, are motivated by their own motives to get Viserys to do things, except for the
Lionel Strong.
He's the only one who's been he's the only one that's really been straight up and saying, hey, these are the decisions that you should make that's best for the realm and not what's going to help me.
Thank you. So in that vein, Otto Hightower brings forth a new proposal to the king. He's like, you know what better way to put all of this unrest and conflict of ideas to rest? How about you just, and I love how he very delicately leans in and says, and it's a little closer to home, because as we talk about here on Westeros and the House of the Dragon podcast side quest, there are many sensitive topics in House of the Dragon, which are not limited to murder, rape, incest, animal cruelty, war, illness, and such. And this is where Otto Hightower suggests betrothing Rhaenyra to her 2-year-old stepbrother.
Half-brother.
Yeah, a half-brother, that's right. To fortify the family line when she's already mad at her dad with the whole Jason Lannister thing. The last thing she needs is to be like, oh yeah, by the way, in the tradition of old Valyria and the Targaryens, you're gonna marry your half-brother now.
But as crazy it sounds, it actually makes the most sense though. Because
it does.
Because if she does marry her brother, then no one could they'll co-rule together and no one will question them for her.
Yes.
So
the question would become in as the Targaryens keep continuing this way of furthering the family line, is how the Septons over in Old Town, with their very antiquated ways in the eyes of the Seven, as we learn later on in Game of Thrones with the whole situation with Jaime and Cersei Lannister and Lancel Lannister, they kind of aren't too keen on the Targaryen way of doing things by perpetuating the family bloodline by marrying brother to sister, aunt to uncle, etc., etc., etc.
But you gotta remember, Game of Thrones was like 200 years later.
Yes,
so,
but
so the mindset might be different.
I don't know if that's entirely true. Part of me, I think that's part of the reason why they were happy when Viserys married Emma Arryn, because she wasn't a Targaryen, even though she had the. They are, aren't they?
Yeah, they are cousins.
But they're cousins. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah. So So strategically, Otto Hightower's suggestion isn't far off from the history and traditions of the Targaryen bloodline. However, Viserys doesn't want to hear it. He's mad already. He's already mad about Jason Lannister. And then Lionel Strong comes up. And Lionel Strong, for me, he is the voice of reason. He is Viserys, like with Daemon Targaryen no longer in the picture. He is, to an extent, Viserys' only true friend, because he's the only person willing to tell Viserys the absolute truth. And so far, for now, I say this and guess what's going to happen like 2 weeks from now. And knock on some wood there real quick. He's like, may I offer my suggestion? And Viserys is already, he's pissed off about Jason. He's pissed off at Hightower. He's just like, oh, what? Are you going to offer your son? Yada, 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 yada. And he's like, thanks, but no, not where I was going, bro. Sit down and chill. And then he brings up the point, and this is a point that Rhaenyra brings up to him as well later, is that the Valyrian branch of the family, especially with its connection to Rhaenys, the queen who never was, is potentially the best match politically and financially and strategically if they want to keep the Valyrian side of the family happy. And which is, there's already that fracturing there because, you know, Viserys very much did not pick the 12-year-old Laena, as he should not have. And Strong brings up the mention of her brother Laenor, and that it would be a suitable match because of the dual family heritage with both Rhaenys as a Targaryen and Corlys as the Valyrian, an old Valyrian family. So there is Valyrian blood. It's just not 100% pure Targaryen blood, which could work out to Rhaenyra's favor, so she doesn't, you know, undergo the same situation her mother had with multiple miscarriages. The problem with Laenor is teenage Laenor has been dragged off to the Stepstones with his father and his uncle and Daemon, and is fighting the battle over there. So the caveat is, should Laenor survive the Stepstones, maybe you'd consider Laenor.
Also, Laenor is the first recast of the series so far. He was a kid in the first season, and now he's a full-fledged adult within 3 years.
I think this is supposed to be teenage Laenor, because there are. It's interesting because I was looking up some information on Laenor earlier today, and there are 3 castings for him. Okay. There was the young Laenor that we see in episode 1. This one is supposed to be a teenager, and he kind of acts like a teenager when we get to that part of the scene. But then there's going to be eventually adult Laenor.
Okay.
So at this point, I think Laenor is probably, he is close to Rhaenyra in age, but what I think he might be slightly younger, like either a year or 2. But for who they cast, he looks like he's at least 18 going on 25.
Right.
But I think he's supposed to be like 16-ish.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this is the one part where, you know, Viserys in his own way apologizes to Lionel as he descends the dice in the tent, and he just walks over to Lionel, puts his hand on his chest, being like, "Thanks, bro." Like, he gave him an option, a viable option,
right?
That wasn't self-serving. It was the first option that wasn't all about him.
Sure.
And it was also at this time, I believe, when the lead huntsman is like, "We found the White Hart. We found the stag." So it's, you know, poor Viserys is drunk at this point. He staggers off, and then we cut to the next morning. But shortly before that, elsewhere in the Godswood, Rhaenyra and Sir Criston Cole have still not yet returned to camp. They've made camp for the night, away from camp. Little campfire, just having a little heart-to-heart, when the horse, and she asks Criston, very pointedly and very directly. And I think this is going to be very telling about their relationship moving forward. She asks him, do you think people will support me as queen? Will they accept me? And him being of low birth and common born basically tells her, you're the heir apparent. You become queen, they have to. Like it's not necessarily a willingness, but because all of these lords around the realm have it sworn fealty that they will support the decision. But we're as they often say in the older version of Game of Thrones, words are wind. Like you can say what you want, but whether or not people follow, it's like actions speak louder than words. Whether or not people follow through on what they've sworn to, as we've learned in Game of Thrones.
Unless you're a Stark.
What?
Unless you're a Stark.
Yeah, well, Starks are they're honest and supportive to a fault. Yep. With the exception of Rob, who decided, like, yeah, I'll marry a Frey girl, but I'll marry this hot Valeria girl instead.
Yeah, he's the only one. Yeah,
he's the only one. He ruined it for everybody.
No, for sure.
Rob.
But what do you think of this budding relationship between Rhaenyra and Christian Cole? Do you think that is going to blossom into something else, or is it like?
It's one of those things where I don't know which way it's going to go, because when we talk about the next episode, because have you seen the trailer that was after? Yes. All right. We'll talk about that because I think that may play into what may happen in the next episode.
Okay.
But yes, because Kristen Cole has been appointed to the Kingsguard by Rhaenyra. Typically, Sir Westerling, our favorite, I call him McDougal from Outlander, but everyone has a different Gray McTavish. Usually he was the one who was appointed to Rhaenyra, so I don't know if in this 3 years that responsibility has shifted to Sir Kristen, or it's only because
he got promoted. Remember, he's the Lord Commander now.
Okay.
So he's his main duty now is to watch over the king directly.
Okay. So. Yeah, it was one of those things where I got really turned around, and like I have the book, and I'm keep trying not to read it. Like I'm trying to wait till the series is finished, but it's like it's like right there, and I'm just like, I just want to pick it up and just. It's like literally right here.
You don't want to spoil it, right? Because you don't want to spoil, because it's one of those things where you don't want to read about it and then oh no, I messed it up for myself.
Well, and that's the hard part, is that the way that Fire and Blood is written, it's unlike Game of Thrones, the original series, where it's different perspectives of the story being all pieced together in different volumes. This is more of a historical fiction, fictitious timeline. Gotcha. So it moves very quickly. Deaths, births, weddings. Who's good, who's bad, who's crazy, who's causing trouble, who gets cut off from the family. But it reads very quickly. And this section of the timeline is like about 200 to 300 pages right in the middle of like a 700-page book.
Gotcha.
So it's like, as soon as Viserys and Rhaenys got born, I just put the book down. I was like, no. I know. Because I read it pretty much, as soon as I got it, I read it up until that point, like the first third, with like over a weekend. So I was like, wow, we gotta make this last until October, like the end of October. So I'm like, just gonna stop for now. And it sucks because it's like right there. But anyway, it's one of those things where the whole relationship between Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole could go in many ways. Yes. They could become lovers. They could become enemies. They could become, one could turn on the other. They could both betray one another. I don't know where. For right now, I like that he's with her, and to an extent, he respects her, not just as as his princess or his soon-to-be queen, but there seems to be a friendship there.
Yes,
much like she has with Westerling. Like it's not just a guy doing his job and watching over her. They're developing a rapport with each other.
Right.
But I don't know where that's going to lead. So,
and it's scary because it's Game of Thrones. So because it is Game of Thrones,
exactly.
You don't have no idea how this is going to end. So
yes,
it's like, because we're trained to not get attached.
I am confident that the moment I'm like, yes, I am all in on them, being more than just queen and her body. Like I don't want Whitney Houston's bodyguard, no Kevin Costner, none of that. I don't want that happening. But then I'm just like, but the tension when she gets older, it could be there. It all depends on if she gets married or not soon.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be just, somebody wants to cause some trouble. All it takes is one rumor from the right person to catch fire. So while they're having this heart to heart alone with their horses, the horses start nickering and they start like kicking about because they sense something, they feel something. And Kristen Cole draws his sword and starts to stare into the woods. We don't got White Walkers, it's not dragons, but we get a wild boar that just bowls him over and goes straight for Rhaenyra and tackles her. And like she's trying to fight it off. That boar is in her face. And Kristen Cole delivers, it's not a killing blow, but he basically skewers the boar straight through the head. And that blade comes inches away from her eye. So he does his job. He saves the princess, but I was like, bro, cut it a little close there. And, Rhaenyra manages to roll the boar over and she just draws her dagger. And I don't know if it's just she's been having like 3 years worth of teenage frustration, angst pent up. But the moment she gets that blood splattered on her, she just lets it all out. Yeah. She just, and then it's not the dagger her father carries. It's a little one, but she just keeps stabbing and stabbing at it until she is absolutely bathed in blood.
Those are a release for her. Yes. Because, she's been so stressed out with everything going on, and she has ears too, so I'm sure she hears rumblings of people trying to unseat her with Aegon and everything like that. So she's not oblivious to it, and she does realize that, hey, my father does have a son now, so this could possibly happen.
Yes.
And so like being all that pent up, and then you almost see as soon as she's done stabbing the hell out of that pig, a sense of relief.
Yes.
In her face, because it's just let all out. It's like, I'm done.
The one thing that it made me laugh about it was that it goes back to the scene earlier when they're in the carriage. And what's the one thing she says she doesn't want to do? She doesn't want to go hunting because the sound of a dying boar sounds like a dying child. And not only does this boar die in front of her, she goes to town and kills it herself. Like, if you were to run some water down that boar's snout, I feel like it would just like all the holes, like water would just come out everywhere. Like she just that was her therapy session for the evening.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
And then we cut to the Godswood. It is a Godswood, not the Godswood. We're in the forest still.
It's
but
the hunting trip.
We're almost there. Viserys is out. He's had enough of the party and the people, but he's not done drinking.
Oh yeah, the fire. Yeah.
He goes out to the bonfire and he's just like giant ass bonfire. It's probably about a good 30 feet wide. He's just staring into the flames, drinking, lamenting his life. This hunting trip was supposed to be fun, fun time for everybody. And who is the person having the least amount of fun right now? It's Viserys. Go ahead.
It's interesting with the fire scenes, because we've seen this with Dany in Game of Thrones, and we saw this a little bit with him in previous episodes. Like, they have this huge infatuation with fire.
Yes.
And you see it in season 1 of Game of Thrones with Dany in the hot water and the fire and putting his hand over it. And you can see Viserys do the same thing. And he's just staring into the fire, just getting lost, because I think it's kind of a comfort for him in an odd way.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see how that ties together with the Targaryens in general.
Yeah, and what I liked about it was that with Viserys in particular, it's he when Alicent approaches him, he's at a crossroads. He's very upset. He's besides himself. He thought he had it. He thought he had everything figured out. And then like the first thing he says to her is like, he's like, I named her to replace Daemon to protect the realm. She was the realm's delight. Rhaenyra was supposed to fix all the problems. And then, he talks about being a dragon dreamer versus a dragon rider. Like, he rode Balerion the Black Dread 3 laps around the city before Balerion died, and he never took another dragon. And that he thinks back to that dream that he had about, Emma giving birth, or not necessarily Emma giving birth, but having a son being born with Aegon the Conqueror's crown and placing that child upon the Iron Throne. And he thought he had lost all of that with Balon. And that ever since he had that dream, he had been searching for it and searching for it and searching for it, and it never came back to him. And I feel like this is the first time in the 3+ years that he's been with Alicent that he's told her this part of the Targaryen lore. Like I feel like he's kept it away from her because she's not Rhaenyra, she's not a Targaryen. So like to talk about dragon dreamers and all this, it seems very foreign to Alicent. Like she's willing to listen, but she doesn't understand what those expectations and that hope for him.
He's also drunk, so it's like she's
He's
looking at him
also
like
he's also very drunk.
she's looking at him like, what's he talking about?
Yes. So it's she's not sure if he's like feeling all right or if he's feeling too all right. But then he gets very emotional where he basically tells Alicent, my obsession with having an heir cost Rhaenyra her mother, and basically admits that what he was so desperate to have a boy that he's pretty much destroyed his relationship with his daughter because he kind of killed her mom. Not on purpose, but kind of on purpose, because he was the one who made the call about the cesarean
right
during the tournament. And that he's very open that to Alicent that like he didn't plan on getting remarried, but he gave into pressure to do what was right. And then not only did he remarry, but the first, like literally within months of being married, she's pregnant with and has a healthy baby boy. And it was one of those things where Alicent, again, she doesn't know if this is a heart to heart or he's just really drunk. And then the horn starts, the horn of the huntsman, that something big has happened.
Right.
So we cut to the next morning. Viserys is probably very hungover. He does not look like he wants to be in the forest at this early hour, surrounded by all these people, all these lords and their dogs and their hunters and their squires and people. But they have found a stag. And I literally tagged the section as bagging the wrong stag, because the whole big to-do about the hunting trip was to celebrate Aegon. And the moment that they announced that there was the white stag, the white hart, the god of the godswood, as it were, or of the king of the kingswood, sorry, that was the one they were destined to find it, and he was nearby, and they were going to get it. And then he comes upon the clearing, and they've found a stag. It's very much not the white hart that they were promised.
They told that too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's your the runner-up prize here. It's
like, yeah, about that stag. We got one. It's not the one, but I mean, you got the big fancy harpoon. It's got a dragon head on it. It's made out of gold. It's from the Lannisters. Why not? So begrudgingly, Viserys takes the spear from Jason, and walks up, and the lead huntsman says, "Make sure you just get him right in the neck. Just stab him one time." And Viserys takes one look at the stag and does not want to do it. He's not like Robert Baratheon, who's just like, "Let me have my hammer," and just like lop its head off.
Right.
He does not want to kill the stag. Like, the hunting party was a good idea until the actual killing part comes along. And I found that very poetic, because it's again, he wants to be a peacetime king. He wants to, live peacefully. Slaughtering a stag in the Kingswood isn't necessarily the way to go about it, even though everyone's saying it's an auspicious sign, it's good luck. The gods couldn't have provided a better sign that this is meant for Aegon, that this is a blessing. So he stabs. He's like, all right, well, they have him tied by the antlers and the back legs, and he just stabs it in the neck. And then the poor thing starts crying and wailing, doesn't fall down. And then he's informed that he didn't stab it in the right place. So the poor thing's now suffering.
Right.
So he has to stab it again. And he does. This time the stag falls to the ground on its side. Thankfully, quickly passes. But there's no satisfaction in it for Viserys. He's not happy it happened. He's not happy that he had to do it. He's hungover to all, you know what, everyone's applauding. He's just like, stop, I don't care. Like he goes back and gives the spear back to Jason and walks off. And it was one of those things, like, I feel like, I don't know if he was disappointed that it wasn't the White Hart, or if he was just,
I think he was just over it at that point.
yeah.
Because I think that with everything that's going on, and you know, it's supposed to be the celebratory hunt, and it ended up being this whole political adventure, and not to mention the drama with his daughter and whatnot. So he was just, you know, like, let's go home now. But here's one of my biggest observations from this thing. King Viserys had a whole posse of people going on this hunt.
Yeah.
Whereas King Robert just had him, his squire, and can't remember his name. The Lord Commander, the one that they banished.
What was it? You're not talking about the Lannister boy, right?
The Lannister squire was there. Lancel was there.
Yeah, Lancel was there.
What's his name? I don't know his name right now. Well, he ended up serving Daenerys later on, but
and not Sir Barristan. Was it Sir Barristan?
Yeah, Sir Barristan Selby.
Yeah,
there you go.
Because he was supposed to protect the king. What's the one thing he didn't do? The king died.
Right. But here's my thing. You see Robert on this party with 3 people total, hunting, and Viserys has this whole crew.
Well, the whole thing was like, everybody wants to celebrate the new possibly king to be, especially because the last one died on the birthing bed. The queen died on the birthing bed. He died a few days later, or the king, or a day later, because he was the king for the heir for a day.
Right.
So such a hateful name. So after Viserys kills the stag, it cuts to a beautiful panorama of Rhaenyra sitting on her horse, with Criston Cole's horse next beside her, with a makeshift cart and the boar strapped to it. The boar that pretty much she killed. Let's give her credit, because it was still kind of twitching and alive after Criston stabbed it.
She killed it.
But then you hear some rustling nearby, and Criston goes to draw his sword, and Rhaenyra stops him, because the actual White Hart found them overlooking the cliffs.
Such an amazing scene too.
Yes,
the cinematography on that. I think that was CGI.
I think so, because it had, King's Landing was in the background, and then they were overlooking the camp where her father and everybody was. But the stag was gorgeous, and it was kind of like, that was the purpose that everybody came here for. And I feel like it was partially Rhaenyra being merciful by not killing it, but also kind of giving like a double set of middle fingers to her dad, being like, hey, guess what I saw, and guess what you guys didn't get. You got the B tier stag, I got first class S tier White Hart. We're bros now.
It was a cool little moment, because you kind of see like this, almost as if like a weight was lifted off of her shoulders. Like the moment that she saw that, she's like, okay, she got lost in the moment, and it's pretty much like, okay, kind of got her own personal message out of this experience, seeing that big ass deer.
Well, for me, the other thing that always reminds me of is, it always reminds me of I think it's either the first or second episode of the original Game of Thrones, is that, the stag is the sigil for House Baratheon. And when they find the direwolf pups, it's a stag that kills the direwolf. Like the antler breaks off on the direwolf's, throat or whatever. So it's one of those things where it's an acknowledgement of, them saying that, this is the king of the Kingswood. And she, as the princess to be and the heiress to the throne, she's just like, she acknowledges the fellow royal, but lets him go peacefully without causing any trouble.
Oh yeah, I like that.
So now we've returned. And the best part after all of this is that Rhaenyra and Criston Cole ride back to the camp, and Rhaenyra has not bathed since she slaughtered this boar. She is still spattered everywhere, and they ride in, and she gives 0 F's about it.
Oh man, she was suffering up the best attitude ever.
She's like, oh, everyone's like, oh yeah, you guys all ran down this deer, but guess what? Big Mommy Rhaenyra did. say I can't sit on the Iron Throne. I can't run with the men. I brought back dinner for tonight, but you don't no need to thank me because like, even the guys that are like the ones that are like skinning the rabbits, everybody stops and they're just like, where has she been? What has she done? Because she walks her camp. She doesn't make eye contact with anyone. She doesn't even acknowledge her father or the baby or her mom or her stepmom. She just keeps
such an
walking.
amazing visual.
It was so good
because she's covered in blood still, except for her face, and then she's just walking there like completely unbothered by the whole situation.
And no one's like running up to her and be like, "Princess, are you okay?" Nobody's asking her anything. They're all in shock by the fact that she spent the night out in the woods with Kristen Cole. She survived. She not only survived, but she came back with like a 70-pound boar strapped to the back of a horse.
It's 470 pounds.
I mean, I don't know how big it is. I don't know how much it weighs. It's probably 200 pounds. I don't know. But she just walks into camp being like, so what did everybody catch? I caught that. And I'm 17.
Well, would have made that scene completely better if she did a hair flip.
Yeah. She's just like, I did that. Thanks. Oh, where's the White Heart? Yeah, we saw him. He's good. Sends his regards.
Oh, what color was that deer that you got? Oh, this one, not the right one. Sorry.
Oh, you got the wrong one. Not very lucky sign now, is it? So later on, we cut back to King's Landing. Everyone's gone back for the night. The party's over. Aegon is, he's in that terrible twos. He's crying a lot. And the wet nurse takes him away, of course, because Otto Hightower has come to speak with his daughter, the Queen. And Otto is it now. He started to plant the seeds with Viserys, but now he's going to go to his much more pliable daughter and propose a. I don't want to say it's an insurrection, but a possible usurpation party, because he basically says to her, well, you did what you're supposed to. You married the king. Good on you. Gave him a son. First go. Good on you. Now what we need to do is make sure that son is on the Iron Throne next and get rid of Rhaenyra. And Alicent is still at the, well, I love my son and I would love nothing but the best for my son. Rhaenyra is still the heir.
She still has that confliction where she's still where she still very much supports Rhaenyra's claim to the throne.
Yes.
At this juncture, she's like, okay, well, Rhaenyra's my friend. She's been named heir. That's how it should be. That's what she wants, right?
Yeah.
And now it's to the point now where it comes down. One of the biggest things with Game of Thrones within the series itself is your family hierarchy, and here she is being asked to do by her father to do something again, even though she doesn't really want to do it. She's gonna end up doing it.
Well, and it's the words that he chooses, like things like saying securing the future of the realm, ending 15 years of uncertainty and doubt. That Aegon is actually the one being robbed of the throne because of the laws of gods and men. So he's trying to appeal to his daughter by using the patriarchy to be like, yeah, so by the way, this is how things are. We're like, we allowed Rhaenyra to like, be a placeholder, but guess what? You did the good job. Kind of now it's time to change the king's mind. And if anyone can bend the ear of the king, if the hand can't do it, if the small council can't do it, surely the queen herself could be the one to change Viserys's mind, as it were.
Right.
And he dispatches Alicent to go see her husband, the king, to show Viserys reason. And the biggest part, like that, she and Viserys, I do appreciate that he has a more open communication with Alicent at this point. Not that she's just popping out his kids, but he can have conversations about Rhaenyra and the greater situation of what's going on at the Stepstones. And Viserys has been so caught up in trying to marry Rhaenyra off that he's forgotten that she wants to be happy. She wants to be loved, and he's kind of been so caught up in her duty and her what she needs to do to secure her line and her claim to the throne that he's forgotten that she's a person too. and
Right.
that he got to marry for love,
Mhm.
and
Kind
that's
of.
kind of there was
They're
duty
but
involved.
yeah, they're betrothed to each other. They just happen to fall in love with each other.
But that was the thing, is that there was still love involved.
Right.
And but Jason Lannister ain't it. There's no love
Oh
there.
no, you totally tell
There's
you totally tell
none.
he has ulterior motives in some
Jason
situations.
Lannister's the worst. But I feel like there's gonna be a lot more people I'm gonna be saying this about throughout House of the Dragon. I said it plenty in Game of Thrones as well, that so and so was the worst. But Jason Lannister, he's on there.
How fun is that for the actor? He gets to play two different characters.
Yeah. It's like, what are your credits? I play this guy and this guy. They're the same guy. Oh, they look the same because they're twins. It's a different kind of twin magic. But what I do appreciate of Alicent at this juncture in time is that even though she and Rhaenyra aren't seeing eye to eye, she still knows Rhaenyra's personality better than her own father does, and that most of the people in the court do. Because the
If there's one
biggest
person that knows her, it's gonna be Allison.
Yes, because they were basically
They're besties.
the HBO version of Alicent. Alicent was born and raised in the capital, so she's been at Rhaenyra's side arguably and probably her entire life. So no one knows Rhaenyra better. She probably knew Rhaenyra better than her own mother did. And the thing when it comes to the marriage proposals is Alicent says Rhaenyra needs to believe it's her choice. If she's forced to make a decision, she's not going to go with it. But if she's the one, because that's always been the big thing with Rhaenyra, is that she was made the heir, but she has no power, and she's not being given any power or any responsibility. Her father keeps like being like, "Oh well, one day you'll do this, one day you'll do this," and he's not educating her. He's just kind of placating her and keeping her around.
She's like the heir in name only at this point.
Yes, she's a paper heir, as it were. She's on paper. That's about as much as she's got right now. And even that, she was supposed to have Dragonstone. What was taken from her by her brother or her uncle? Dragonstone. So it's one of those things like where for all of Alicent's machinations, her knowing Rhaenyra as well as she does is a good thing. But it's also going to be probably part of their falling out moving forward because they know each other so well. Exactly. That they know all their weaknesses, they know all their secrets. And it's one of those things where when they come, she also sees the scroll of parchment on the table and asks Viserys if she can read it. And it's one of those things like in this scene, as we talked about Viserys earlier, he's drinking out of a cup by the fireplace, and you now notice that 2 of his fingers are amputated. He had worn gloves the entire time during most of the hunting trip, and then when the one time he did take his glove off, it was the hand that had all 5 fingers. This is the hand that doesn't have them. So she is also, on top of everything else, she knows the actual health state of the king. And much like her father, who knows that, his health is not doing well either. But they start to talk about the stepstones and how, it was Daemon's choice to do it. But, sending aid would make the crown look weak. And it's a very rare scene where Viserys actually asks his wife for political advice or diplomatic advice in regards to the situation, what needs to be done. Typically, this is a conversation he would have with the small council, but the small council, he asks them and he gets like 5 different answers. Probably the only good one out of all of them is probably Lionel Strong, now that Corlys is gone. So it's one of those things where she takes Daemon out of the equation and thinks about it in a greater scheme of the realm, which is again one of those things where even though right now she has a lot more to lose or gain because she's the queen and she is the queen, the mother of a potential heir of the throne, she boils the situation down to the one thing that Viserys is not looking at, which is, do you want to have this person being a problem and getting stronger, or do you want to put this behind you so it's not a problem anymore? And it's one of those things where it's just like, I liked, because that in alone, it showed a bit of maturity. And it also has shown that she's been paying attention to what all the wives are saying in these little like chit chat circles that they have, where they're all, basically talking about all the stuff that their husbands aren't supposed to be telling them about. So she's taking all of the advice from all the ladies and all like the hearsay and being like, well, if I were you. But again, this is where it's curious because she's not the queen. She's the queen, but she's not the ruling. She's not the regent. She's not the one in power, but she is actually now giving the king important diplomatic advice, strategic diplomatic advice, where she's just like, well, do you want it to be a problem? Because it's already been a problem. It's been a problem for several years now. It could become a bigger problem if we don't fix the problem.
Yeah, I almost thought when she entered that scene that she was going to go in there and do exactly what her father said, but she didn't really do that. She ended up actually like being there for her husband and giving him a solution to his issues that he was having, instead of trying to push her own narrative of let's get A on the throne.
Well, see, that's where I also find the choice of her taking that approach, that also lays the foundation of trust on a diplomatic side and on a political side, where should it come time for her to, she knows the timing right now this is not the time to push it.
Right.
She needs either Rhaenyra to be married or out of the picture. She needs to find a way to get Viserys on her side so she can, or at least leaning towards trusting her with more important, pertinent information, where she could be like, well, how about this?
And she's been the most strategic person out of everyone so far.
Yes, she's very smart because, of course, she loves to read. But I also believe that her father is teaching her very well. Mm-hmm. Because the one thing that's working in Alicent's favor is that she's also very unassuming, because she's also still playing nice with everyone. She wants everyone to get along. She wants Rhaenyra and Viserys to get along. She wants everyone to be happy. She wants everyone to be together. So what happens next is that, she asks the question, which is better for the realm? For the crab feeder to thrive, or for him to be vanquished so we can move on? Which cuts to the next morning at the small council meeting. And Rhaenyra walks in as her father is dispatching a messenger to Dwarfstone, to where both Corlys and Daemon are stationed, trying to fight for the Stepstones. And he's finally given in. He's going to send some ships. He's going to send some men. And then Rhaenyra's like, all right, what changed your mind? And then, of course, the room clears out and it's just the two of them. And, Viserys is very frustrated with Rhaenyra because, him and the pair of them have not had very good communication as father and daughter. And now he's getting irritated with her and kind of saying, well, now that Daemon's not here, you're the thorn on my side. You're the one who's causing trouble. We're always at odds. Why aren't we getting along? And he's very bad about communicating that all of the things he's been doing was for her benefit, that he was doing it as her father, that he wanted her to get married. He wanted her to have kids. He wanted her to do all of these things, not just because he loves her, but to secure her claim to the throne.
Yes.
But he keeps overlooking the fact that he's the one who's made this more complicated for her by getting remarried and having a son. And this is where Rhaenyra, she has her fill of what her father said, and she finally levels with him. And she basically says that you keep pushing me to get married because all you want to do is replace me with Alicent Hightower's son. You have no further use for me, so you might as well get as much for me as you can. And
the wording in that was strategic too.
It was so good.
Instead of saying my brother, she said Alicent Hightower's son.
Yes.
Specifically. So that's gonna, I think the users of those words are gonna play on as the series progresses, because it tells me that she doesn't recognize him as a brother, but as a competitor.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's very much she's felt very removed from this family, this new family of hers. Alicent's married in, and Alicent now has a kid, but Rhaenyra's like, you're not my family. You're not my stepmother. We're not friends anymore. Stop trying to be my friend. The moment you started keeping secrets from me and, hanging out with my dad behind my back, that's when our friendship stopped. And I think Alicent is going to have to come to terms with that at some point.
Yeah.
And her father's just like, he's just like, I know. He's like, you don't understand what's going on. He's like, I don't plan to replace you. You're misjudging me. You're seeing all the wrong things. But the thing that Viserys is having a difficult time admitting is that Rhaenyra just told him the reason why she's been this rebellious teenager for the last 2 years.
Right.
And because she's very aware that people are now talking ever since Aegon was born, the conversation started the moment that Alicent got pregnant. It became a reality the moment Aegon was born. And the fact that they put so much effort and work into his second birthday, which he's not going to remember, and through that big tournament for Balon, who, you know, wasn't even born yet, and she hasn't had that. And she's the heir to the realm. So it's one of those things where this is again another time where I hate the fact that Viserys and Rhaenyra keep having to have these very poignant, hard-hitting conversations, only because the well has filled up so much that the dam's about to break. Like they wait too long to have these important conversations with each other.
But
And
it
go
was
ahead.
like it was the most towards the end of that conversation. It was very fatherly and daughterly.
Yes.
Because I think once they're able to hash air all on the table, they came to a realization on a lot of things.
Yes.
And
they just need to stop waiting until the kettle's about to boil over before they have these conversations. And it was one of those things where Viserys is trying to talk about, you know, station and duty and responsibility. And I love that Rhaenyra, this is where Rhaenyra pulls no punches with him.
mm-hmm.
She said, if it were an advantage for you, you should have wed Lena Valerian. So
Yes.
she basically said, like, she calls him out because, yes, while she wouldn't have wanted him to marry a 12-year-old, she would have preferred it because she knew about it. Her, you know, Corlys and
also there's more political gain from Viserys marrying Lyanna Valerian versus Alicent Hightower. What did he gain from marrying Alicent Hightower?
He married for love, and that's the problem. Is that it was it was the whole, well, you were supposed to still have loved my mother back then. You were still mourning her, but you still took a new wife. So it's one of those things where he, bring the mention of Lena Valerian, that's Rhaenyra getting the nerve to call her father out on his bullshit, basically.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And he tells her the same thing. You need to marry, you need to shore up your success, you need to multiply, you need to make sure that you have enough root and enough behind you that this is not going to be a problem for you and people aren't going to question you moving forward. And then the agreement that it's kind of an agreement that they come on is that Viserys, no matter what, he wants her to marry for love. He knows she has a duty, but then he gives her the choice to go find someone herself. He's not going to do it for her. He's not going to let Alicent do it for her. He's not going to let Otto Hightower certainly not do it for her. He's going to give her the freedom to make the choice herself.
Right.
And this is where he's like, make the match yourself, search for him yourself, find one that pleases you. And this is where he says, the next thing he says, I feel are very like famous last words. I swear on your mother's memory that you will not be supplanted. And it's that's all fun and great, Dad. However,
right.
I that alone makes me feel like something's going to happen where there is going to be a scramble.
Oh, for sure. There's something wrong. But
I'm not wanting to kill anybody off just yet, but yeah. it feels like we're getting there.
I did feel like at the end of that exchange, I thought they were gonna hug.
Yeah.
Just because like a lot got, you feel like a sense of relief for both of them, because again, it's the first time they had this conversation. It's the first time they've actually communicated their issues with one another and whatnot. And a very father-daughter moment. I'm like, oh, cool. They're gonna get up and hug it out. No.
Nope. Well, and the other thing was that this feels like the first real conversation they've had since the time he asked her in the bottom of the Red Keep in front of Balerion to succeed him, to be that he wants her to be the one to carry on the family tradition. So it's like you waited 3 years to have this conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
No wonder you guys aren't getting along. No wonder you're both miserable. it's just like, I feel like both of them, but I'm not gonna put it all on Viserys, because Rhaenyra needs to, she also needs to get over whatever mixed feelings she has about Alicent right now. If the relationship with her father is as important as she keeps saying it is, she also needs to do the work. And it's been clear that neither of them have been doing the work. They're just doing as they're told and going through the motions. But then it you know, comes to a head like this, where it's just like, I also think that her flat out calling her dad out about Laena Velaryon could potentially lead to something involving the Velaryons moving forward, especially after we go back to Dwarfstone.
Yeah.
And last time we were at Dwarfstone, you know, Daemon was losing the war and losing it badly. Prince Cregus Drahar, one of the things I noticed about the Crab Feeder's mask, it reminded me a lot of the Sons of the Harpy masks. Like the golden masks. It had that one horn. I think it's probably, so this, you know, the group, the Sons of the Harpy, they could be a very old, you know, order or group of assassins, whatever, from the Free Cities. And seeing that mask, I was like, I've seen that mask somewhere. I'm just, oh my gosh, yes. Again, another little bit of continuity from the original series, which I really enjoyed. So they're all having this powwow at the table. They've got they're you watched a couple of ships, like 3 little ships are going by, some fireballs are going out. Middle ship gets sunk like right in front of their eyes, and just like, bro, we're still losing the war. We're still here. The men are tired. The dragons are tired. What are we gonna do? And now we have a third Valyrian at the table. We've got Corlys, former master of ships, out, you know, doing the thing. We've got his son Laenor, but now we also have Vaemond, the third son of Corlys's younger brother, as it were. And Vaemond really isn't too keen on Daemon. He's not happy that the Valyrian fleet's been dragged out to the Stepstones to fight this war. There's no support from the king. They you know, they keep talking, they keep saying, they said continue sending the dragons, plural. So we know that they have more than one dragon, but again, the only one that we see up until this point is Caraxes. The problem that they're having is that no matter, they're kind of like a turtle. The Crab Feeder and his guys, they go out, they do all the fighting, but then they retreat back into the cave, and they haven't figured out a method or a plan to get them out of the caves long enough to make sure they can kill everybody. So the plan is, they're like, we need to figure a way to lure him out. And as soon as they're talking about it needs to be a grand gesture, it needs to be something really, really big. Who happens to park his dragon and come strolling down the hill? Caraxes has landed. Daemon Targaryen. Daemon's looking a little worse for wear. Daemon looks tired.
He looks stressed too.
He looks tired. He looks stressed. He looks pissed off. He's done all the things. He's been fighting and fighting and fighting. And usually fighting anything is easy for Daemon. This has not been easy for him. And you know, knowing how much that they've lost, how many lives they've lost, how many ships they've lost, it's weighing on him no matter how much he's trying to play it cool. So while this is all going on, Vaemond, you know, shoots his mouth off, and it's interesting because Vaemond doesn't talk to Daemon directly. He talks to Corlys, who is theoretically ranked lower than him, about, you need to take care of this. You need to do the right thing. We need to move forward. And Daemon's standing right there. And Daemon's like, bro, he's not in charge. I am. And, you know, it was interesting because, you know, they had like all the warriors, everyone's on the perch, everyone's tired, everyone's like war torn. And at this point, King Viserys' emissary shows up, and you know, comes riding in with the good news. Gives the little scroll of parchment to Daemon. Daemon opens it, calmly reads it, rolls it back up, and hands it to Corlys for Corlys to read. And then grabs his helmet and proceeds to beat this man. He literally didn't have a gun to shoot the messenger, but he beat the messenger within an inch of his life. And it's one of those things where they have to pull him off and ask him to stop and get a bunch of people to, you know, break up the group. And, you know, Daemon's too proud Oh, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Nope.
Oh no, my audio dropped. What? Oh no, hold on.
Yes, folks, we've been having technical difficulties this whole podcast.
No! No, 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 no. Sound. No, 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 no. So this is take 3. I had at some point my mic decided to die, or Ruben's computer decided to not work. I don't know. We're just trying to get to the very, very end, because we are near the very end of this episode.
Almost.
And then just as I started doing the intro, I realized I did not change my government name into the naming on this window. I had my work email address, and I really don't want people knowing where I work. So I had to restart the restart again. So that's where we're at. All right.
What's up, Publix, everyone in Orlando?
Man, telling you, I've got no luck. So where we left off. So
we're at the War Council meeting of
you're at the War Council meeting. Damon decided to beat down a messenger.
Right. So
and then
here's the one I always found interesting with Game of Thrones. They have time to make miniaturized figurines of all the they have a complete D&D set ready to go.
I mean, sometimes the war is just not going your way, and you're like, you know what? Let's carve some fancy some pieces to make this look a lot cooler than like rock A, rock B. But yes, so Damon, in theory, just shoots the messenger, as it will.
Oh yeah, no, because I think at that juncture he's just pissed off because like, oh, now my brother wants to help.
Yeah, right? after nearly 3 years of this nonsense, he's finally grown a pair and decided to show up and send some ships and some men.
That was the catalyst to what Laenor needed, because Laenor's plan during the before Damon got there was, we need someone to bring the crabs out. That way we can attack them. And they're like, who's going to do it? And like, Damon will do it. And like, no, you won't, right? Because they will look like Daemon Targaryen is gonna sacrifice himself.
Yeah. And if we've not learned anything at this point, Daemon Targaryen has one massive ego, and he's doing his damnedest to prove that he is not just worthy of the Iron Throne, but he is worthy of anything and everything that comes his way. But Laenor, yeah. So Laenor has been aged up. He is now, we're guessing, late teens. He's not like the little boy that we had at the jousting tournament, but just 3 years ago. If he's supposed to be around 15 or 16 years old, I don't know what's in the water in Westeros, but he looks a bit older than that.
Oh yeah.
Until he gets on his dragon in a little bit. So the catalyst, as you said, was, this is exactly what they needed to put Laenor's plan into action. I don't know where Laenor got this grand idea that he's going to be a strategist for the rebellion that's going on right now, but here we are. And all you see is Daemon rowing out in a little dinghy, rowing across the narrow sea to the island where the crab feeder is. And the island is the beach and the shore littered with boats and, crucified crewmates, hollowed out everything. All of the spoils of war, all of the loss that they'd had in the last 3 years is strewn across that beach. And Daemon he went there alone. And he walks past a tattered sail, tears it off, walks past a broken box, grabs a pole. And I'm like, this man is making a surrender flag. Daemon Targaryen, the man who will fight as dirty as he needs to do whatever he wants, to take whatever he wants, he can't possibly be ready to lay down and admit defeat. Oh, no. He's much too smart and much too arrogant for that. But sure enough, he climbs the highest little vantage point on that beach, waves the flag. Crab feeder slowly comes out of the cave. The archers, they pop back up on the ridge. He plants the flag in the ground. He takes out Dark Sister, unsheathes her, and presents a Valyrian sword. His sword, the sword of Visenya, sister wife of Aegon the Conqueror, to Crhaegar, crab feeder. And I was like, no, this can't be it. This can't be it. So, Drahar sends
his minions.
a couple of minions out
His red shirts.
to slowly make their way, his little crabby friends to like make their way towards the hill. And sure enough, Daemon offers up his sword. And the stooge number 3 takes the sword.
Inspects it. He's like,
He's like,
nice sword.
This is pretty sweet. You sure you want to do this, bud? I can make a lot of money on this Valyrian steel. And Daemon's like, takes out his dagger and just starts going to town. Stabs the guy, takes his sword back very quickly, may I add, and starts hacking and slashing away at the minions. Now,
total badass in this scene too.
If there was this very much gave me Battle of the Bastards, Jon Snow, like taking the fight to the enemy by himself. And I've been saying, I'm waiting for that one moment for Daemon Targaryen to win me over. And sure enough, this was it. He just started fighting his way by himself up the beach, closer and closer to the caves. And they started knocking those bows and launching those arrows. And he just started running. And they waves and waves of arrows are coming after him. And he's running and dodging and diving. And he ends up, he eventually, after the 3rd or 4th wave, he's been pretty lucky. He's moving pretty fast. He starts getting hit. He gets hit in the leg. He gets hit in the chest. He gets hit in the stomach. And he gets trapped in a hollowed out hull of probably an old ship. And more waves of arrows fall down. More waves of arrows fall down. And then all of a sudden from the caves, all of the crab feeders, little minions, they all start streaming out, just surrounding him. Like they make a giant circle, and it very much like Battle of the Bastards, they start closing in on him and closing in on him and closing in on him, and gets closer and closer and closer. And Daemon's snapping arrows and pulling them out, and I'm like, let's go! Come on, baby, let's go! But he's trapped.
Right.
And just when you think they're getting it close enough to him to finally, end Daemon Targaryen, take away the brother of the king, a wall of flames just tears through the entire group. But it's not Caraxes that's on the scene. No. Much like his namesake, Sea Smoke comes riding over the misty waters with a young hooping and hollering Lair Valerian as if he's a cowboy going, Dracarys. It was the most American sounding Dracarys I've ever heard on the series. But man, was I was happy to see, again, new dragon.
Right.
And from what I gather of the book description of Sea Smoke, he's supposed to be a little bit smaller, but also very nondescript. He's meant to blend in with the clouds and the misty waters. So he's not shiny, he's not sparkly, he's not giant, but he's a pretty sizable dragon.
Decent size.
But I am curious to know how long Laenor has had Sea Smoke as his mount.
Right.
And also how long Laenor has been fighting and as a dragon rider. Because again, like I said, he fights like like I was ready for him to be very much, hey gamers, let's go. Like he was very Laenor looked like he was having way too much fun riding this dragon and torching the ever loving you-know-what out of this cove.
Oh, no, it's just like G.I. Joe. When Cobra would attack, the yell at Cobra.
Yeah.
But how do you know where I'm at? You keep moving your position. But yeah, he was having a ball. You're right though. That is the scene where he did definitely show his age.
Yeah.
Just by the amount of joy and how much fun he was having killing people on
it's a dragon. You're lighting them on fire, that's great, but you should not be having he looked like he was having the time of his life.
Right.
Like having riding a dragon, like much how Dany and Jon Snow did, like, oh yeah, we're riding a dragon, life's great. That's fine. But it's we're torching human beings with nowhere to run. And I'm sounding like what was it? Was it Bruce Willis in Die Hard? It's like yippee-ki-yay, mother ever. Like that's the vibe I got. Like Laenor was just having way too much fun with it.
Way too much fun.
But again, if I were a 16-year-old boy on a dragon being able to actually light people on fire, I might be the same way. I don't know.
No guarantees.
No guarantees. I can't say I'd be like a very stoic about it. I'd be like, no, man, let's burn things. And so at this point, the fire and the dragon are the distraction. For Corlys, and his brother and all the remaining forces to storm the beach and rescue Daemon, or at least give Daemon enough of an opportunity to go after the crab feeder himself, which he does. He scrambles up and stalks his way straight. He sees the crab feeder retreat into the cave, leaving all of his men out there. But he makes a beeline straight for there, and he goes in the cave. And he's not in that cave very long before he comes strutting out, drenched. I mean, homeboy looked like he rolled around in it for effect, soaking wet in blood, and he's dragging half of the corpse of the crab feeder, entrails trailing behind him, intentionally through the entire fray, through all the people, all the way to the water. And that's what we end on. Daemon Targaryen and the Valerians, including young Laenor with Sea Smoke, they've done the thing. They've finally defeated the crab feeder, with his little piranha crabs.
Well, in the beginning of the episode, when Daemon was on Dragonback, he's like, "Where are you? I'm gonna feed you to your crabs." And sure enough, that's what he did at the end. Was,
it's exactly what he did, and it was I don't know if like I from what I could tell, I think the crab feeder was very much dead at this point.
Oh, you're not alive to that.
Yeah, like like there was too much like crab feeder hanging out from the bottom half of his torso for him to be still alive. But like this was the moment where I'm just like, that beautiful bastard did it. Daemon Targaryen, for all the horrible, hateful things he said in episodes 1 through 3, he finally did it. He finally won me over. And I think it's because he did a heroic act. Granted, it was out of spite for his brother and out of frustration for the situation, but he did it anyway.
Oh, self-serving for sure.
Oh, very self-serving. Because
I think he was content with letting this war play out as long as it can. Yes. But the moment his brother says, "Oh, I'm sending help," he's like, "Oh, no, the hell you are."
It's like, "Oh, you can send help, but all they can help with afterwards will be the beach cleanup because I started this. I'm going to finish this." So it kind of like it took the moment that letter came from the king with the saying that the ships were coming with 2,000 men. It was go time. He's like, "You know what? We can't. What's the plan? You got a plan? Lander, what's the plan? You want me to go? Good. Get me a dinghy. I'm out.
I got you. Let's go.
I got you. Let's go. I'm not worried. I have dragon. You have dragon. Let's do the dragon thing." I was surprised that Caraxes did not join this fight. That it was just Laenor on Sea Smoke. I would have liked to have seen, Daemon giving Caraxes the ability to also partake, but it was also probably to keep Caraxes removed in case something happened to Sea Smoke. Right. That they had a backup dragon.
Well, but it's interesting because in before Jon Snow got into the picture in the original series, there's that, was it season 5 or 6 where Daenerys and the dragons just go to town on the Free Cities.
Yeah.
On the current scene, so it's like, do the dragons need someone to tell them where to go and aim the fire at, or do they have to have a pilot? Otherwise, they're just burning shit. So
I don't know, and that's the other thing is that like when I was talking about the preview for this episode last week with Tim, when I saw that dragon in the trailer, I thought it was Vhagar who they were who Laena Targaryen or Laena Valerian was talking about, and I was like, oh man, can you imagine Vhagar just coming up and burning everything? But it wasn't. It was Sea Smoke, which still leads me to believe that somewhere out there, Vhagar could be one of the remaining dragons that we see.
Oh no, I predict we're going to see Vhagar because they name dropped that her way too much.
That's what I'm saying. They keep bringing her up, and I'm just like, you can't. You got to bring. You can't just like you can't lead with that and just be like, leave me hanging. So that was the episode. What were your thoughts? Is there any one scene that you really liked? Any characters that you're now second guessing? What were your overall thoughts?
Overall, this episode, I think out of the 3 episodes, this was the best episode so far, just because like it got a lot in terms of character development. I do like the scenes with Rhaenyra and
just her, coming to her own, right? She's coming to a realization that, hey, maybe Rhaenys is right. This is not a guarantee, right? And you see that the seeds of doubt are planted in her mind already, and they're starting to take hold, and it's affecting her personally and whatnot. I do like this growth from David Targaryen. I know this is Westeros, so if he was a wrestler, who would David be?
I don't know.
He reminds me of Jay White. As much as you don't want to hear that, that's who he is.
I could see Jay White. Should Jay White prepare to have a face turn? If at some point there's a face turn in the cards for Jay White, I could easily see it could be that he does that one heroic gesture and I'd be like, that son of a bitch got me. He finally sold me on it. Not there just yet.
Right.
But yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, no, but his scenes too were great too. Like that whole, he looked like a total badass when he's his fake surrender, and as he's evading capture, evading these arrows, he's still killing people at the end. I was like, wow, that's how can you not like that?
That was the thing. Is like for me, like I was a huge Jon Snow fan. So like because that the way that scene was shot, it really mirrored that Battle of the Bastards scene for me.
Right.
So it was just it also gave me when Daenerys raids the supply line after Highgarden with Drogon, and then Jaime Lannister grabs he grabs the lance and he's going after, or he takes the old bolt from the Scorpion and he's riding right towards Drogon right before they get pitched into the water. And it was it's that same like Jon Snow, like heroic good guy Jaime Lannister vibe, and I'm just like, you got me. But now it's like I want good things to happen for Daemon, but I also have a lot of like I still feel that there's like Daemon still has a lot of bad things that he has to do because he's very much a bad boy right now.
He's an asshole at heart. I think he's gonna be a self-serving asshole who often does good things.
That's very possible.
So, I think that the relationship with Viserys, I think a lot of the series is gonna will be dictated on what happens with Viserys, because like right now everything's set up to where he's in control. He's the king, right?
Yep.
So technically, neither Rhaenyra nor Aegon can take the throne until he dies.
Correct.
So what happens in the event that he does die? Is that when chaos ensures? So I mean, because we all saw how chaotic it was when what's his name?
Robert Baratheon.
When Robert Baratheon died, it's like how chaotic was that? Yes. And now we have all these Targaryens now who all want the same thing, and correct. It's gonna get super messy.
It's already on the way of getting messy. And the other thing is that when I think back to the women's circle at the camp, they asked Rhaenyra point blank, well, he's your uncle. And she's like, well, I haven't talked to him in 3 years. So it's at what point if they do, how will Daemon and Rhaenyra reconnect with each other?
Right.
Because Rhaenyra now understands why Daemon was so frustrated and why Daemon left the way he did when she got named as heir. And now there's someone that could potentially, even though Viserys swears up and down it's not going to happen, she's now slowly falling into that same place that Daemon's in, where she has to watch her back now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's so many moving pieces that's going on here, because we have a general inkling of what's happening, but as we know, everything's subject to change with
absolutely with
Game of Thrones. And it's like, if there was characters to where I'm attached to, would probably be both Daemon and Rhaenyra right now, just because they've had the most screen time of them actually doing something.
Yes.
I think that Alicent has very well slowly established herself as the villainess of the group so far. I think that as she ages, there'll be more to it. Almost Cersei-like. So
I feel like she's like Alicent it's not just Cersei, but I think she's gonna have the bad parts of Dany in her too.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
Especially if it becomes a power grab, or she's like trying to she'll it's the desperation. I feel like at some point she's gonna get desperate to hold on to or to make or to gain control.
Well, you heard the ladies at that circle, that gossip circle, talking about that the highborn who got sold to the pillow house as a prostitute. So it's like, man, is that gonna is that what happens when people lose their seat at the table?
Yeah. And how nobody seems to care about it. They're like, oh yeah, well, I mean, it happens. Poor Lady Joanna. Sucks to be her. Like, no one's been like, well, maybe we should like go hire someone and rescue her. It's like, ah, too bad, so sad.
Like, can we check on her? No.
No,
They have the resources.
It's not for any lacking of money. As Jason Lannister will certainly tell you, they have plenty of money.
Plenty of it.
Plenty of it. And Caster Legock is twice as tall as the wall, so whatever. But yeah, so now we go into, so that's the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But now we go into the trailer for next week. And it opens with, again, finally, more father-daughter time. Viserys is showing Rhaenyra the secrets of the dagger, including putting it over the fire, heating it up. And apparently the prophecy about the prince who's promised is inscribed, probably in Old Valyrian, on the dagger, or in the dagger.
That's a nice little touch.
And it seems like there's also going to be another time jump to a year. So because at some point in the trailer, they mentioned that Aegon is now 3. So a year has passed. We have the return of the prodigal brother, as it were, as a with a very, it gave me Iron Islands vibes. Crown. He comes in with a crown of his own, returning from the narrow sea.
King of the Narrow Sea.
The king of, and I believe that is the proposed or suggested title for the episode next week, is the King of the Narrow Sea. So, Daemon's been a very busy boy since he dethroned the crab feeder, as it were. We don't know what his status with the Valerians are. We don't know if they're still buddy or what's in the works for them. But it's interesting because during the time of his return, there is a minstrel that is narrating the situation, where they're talking about the lines now, the 3 potential lines of succession, whether it's the king's brother, the king's daughter, or the king's newborn, 3-year-old son.
Right.
And it's interesting because in Fire and Blood, it's supposed to be like the histories are pieced together from maesters, but also from court minstrels and jokers. And there's a character in the book named Mushroom. So I'm wondering if Mushroom is going to finally make an appearance, or if this is just another minstrel like spreading the court gossip by singing a witty song. But Mushroom tends to be like in the book of Fire and Blood. Mushroom tends to be the one with all the juicy gossip, like the stuff that the maesters probably wouldn't tell you.
So Mushroom's TMZ.
Yes, Mushroom is your dirt sheet writer. He's got all the juicy gossip. People don't want to believe it until enough proof is brought forward. Speaking of which, apparently somebody starts a rumor about Rhaenyra, and we don't know who's it with, what it involves. Right. We don't know who started the rumor. This is where I started raising my eyebrows about Kristen Cole, because I'm like, does this involve Kristen Cole? Does it involve possibly Laenor Valerian, as when she called her father out about how he could have married Lena, but she didn't? Could this be that this is where the Valerians, now that they were successful in the war, they won over the Stepstones, they now control the Narrow Sea? Is this where Corlys and Rhaenys make a play for Rhaenyra through Laenor? Mm-hmm. Is there a rumor about Rhaenyra and Daemon? We don't know.
Right.
But Daemon shows up being all wearing a black cloak and being all sketchy, hopping out of windows. I don't know what's going on. He's up to no good. He's back.
He's always up to no good.
He's back and he's ready to cause trouble. And I'm very curious. And also, I think now knowing that the king has a male heir, I start to wonder if Daemon and Rhaenyra are going to play the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And at some point, somehow, they're going to form an alliance of some sort, purely out of necessity.
Yeah, I believe so too. I think that, it's weird because you see what the High Tower are trying to do.
Yes.
Right. And, I know Aegon's only 3, but, he's going to be loyal to his mother.
Yes. especially if the king dies while he's still young and Alicent becomes the queen regent, much like Cersei did when Robert Baratheon died, and she was in charge of Joffrey and Tommen.
Right.
So it'll be at this point. I'm pretty sure that Alicent will probably have had her second child because she was very pregnant in this episode. So it all depend on who the second child is, if it is another boy or if it is a girl, and how that character's. So I think we're getting close to the part where there's going to be another jump in age, because the Dance of the Dragons can't really happen until, well, two things: one, Viserys is dead, and two, I'm guessing Aegon is old enough to be legitimately considered to be placed on the throne.
Right.
Which won't happen if he's like under the age of 10.
Yeah, can't be 8 to be king.
Yeah. So it'll be very curious to see which way they go with all of this.
Oh yeah.
And then the closing shot of the trailer is Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole on very much a very large Targaryen ship going somewhere. We don't know where. But Prince Daemon and Caraxes just happen to fly on by and kind of, bump the mast of the giant ship. Don't know if it's intentional. Don't know if it's going to be, if it's an aggressive bump or it's just a, I see you. I see you. So we don't know where we're going just yet.
So good.
So
overall, it's been such a good series. I think, like, even though it's based in Westeros,
yes,
it's its own story.
Yes.
I haven't really found the need to go north. Like, I'm happy being in King's Landing right now, and
yes,
and seeing the story fleshed out, because, like, I think one of the biggest issues with the original series is, like, everyone was so invested in the Starks.
Yeah.
And I was worried that when this show came out that people would want more Starks and less Targaryen, but it sounds like the showrunners are keeping a good track of making it all about the Targaryens and not the Starks.
The thing about Game of Thrones is that the key part of A Song of Ice and Fire was the War of the Five Kings. So it was the Baratheon brothers, the Targaryen princess, the Lannisters and the Starks, everyone vying for their own piece of the world, everyone getting tired of being ruled by one seat when they can all rule themselves and just get along. But with this, the House of the Dragon is based, the basis of the book, as much as I've read so far of it, the first like 300 pages I've read of it, it's all about the history of the Targaryens and those who marry into the family. So unless a Stark marries into the Targaryen bloodline at some point, I don't think they do.
Right.
But again, I haven't read all the way through the book because don't want to be spoiled. But I feel like right now it's all about the succession, therefore it can all stay within the capital. And I do like that they're focusing on other families in the series. Like, we do have the obligatory Lannister there. You have the occasional Stark, but we're talking about older families like the Valerians and the Hightowers, which when it comes to Game of Thrones, those are families that aren't really represented at all.
Not at all.
So
you don't hear about Hightower. You don't hear about Westerling. You don't hear about Strong. You don't hear about none of them. So I think Lionel Strong is that. I think Harrenhal's his keep.
It sure is. That poor bastard is the in charge of the cursed castle of Harrenhal, and nobody. And that was like a running joke in the original Game of Thrones, is that nobody wanted Harrenhal. Everyone knew it was full of ghosts. So I don't know if something else is going to happen at Harrenhal between now and then. But as we get closer to the formal Dance of the Dragons, maybe something will. We don't know.
We'll see. Because it does make you question what happens to these houses, because some of them aren't even represented at all in the original series. So
so it's one of those things where I feel like in this particular series, depending on how things progress towards the Dance of the Dragons and how long this series, they're going to focus on the series and how it ties into Game of Thrones, there are houses that could go extinct if all the male heirs are killed off.
Oh, for sure.
So, and that includes the Hightowers, because Alicent has 2 older brothers. So who's to say that if there is a war, that House Hightower could be on the chopping block? Same thing with the Valerians. even though they are of Old Valyria and they are tied to House Targaryen in their own way. It's one of those. It all depends on how the war that nobody wants to admit is on their way to come. It all depends on how people pick and choose their sides.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Predictions?
Pardon?
You have any
Predictions?
predictions?
I feel like relatively soon Viserys is gonna die, and it's going to become a very big problem.
I do too. I think that's what's gonna happen
Because
sooner rather than later.
his health is deteriorating, and I don't know if it's going to be a big thing in front of a whole bunch of people, if there's going to be a cover, like somebody discovers that he's dead and there's a cover up or a scramble. We don't know. But it's again, it's gonna get messy. I want more dragons. I want to see Vhagar. I'm on Vhagar watch. Team Vhagar forever. But yeah, I'm very. I also want to see more dragons that aren't, the usual suspects. But I also want to make sure that them being brought into this is organic. So that being said, we are going to wrap up here. We've had quite the adventure trying to get this episode together. I don't know why. The first
it would be my episode.
It would be your episode, Ruben. Because with WH, it was fine. With Tim, it was fine. I don't know if it's a holiday and my internet decided to say, you know what, deuces, we're not working today. Or to make an even better story for the ongoing feud that you and I. There's no feud between Ruben and I. It's very playful. We are friends, but it's the of course it would be this episode.
It's so fitting.
Well, that being said, next week I will have my friend Neil Flanagan from Post Wrestling on. And then finally, the week after that, I will have another woman on the show. We will have some women. Fear not, dear faithful listeners. There will be women coming to the Salty Seahorse to talk on Westeros. Yes, women who watch wrestling, if you can believe it. But that being said, we're going to call it quits here for this week. I will try to get this together, but I will see you soon. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. All right, let's try take 3. So if you haven't noticed, we've had a bit of an adventure today, and I feel like it's just because Ruben's here, and the world wants to give Ruben reasons to give me shit.
That makes sense.
We are going to try to wrap this up as quick as we can before something else happens. Let me also take. We're gonna have to redo that part because I just realized my work email is in my.
No.
Yeah, no. Hold on a minute.
We don't want that.
Nope, we don't want that. So we're gonna rename myself. I mean, people who are smart enough. You put that away.
Use that as my background.
I hate you. Put that away. You jerk. No participants. Done. Close the chat. I don't want it. Okay. We're gonna retake that. All right, so this is take 3.